In a quiet town, a single act of kindness sparked a revolution. When a young teacher named Cruz was fired for giving her lunch to a hungry student, she never imagined it would lead to helicopters thundering over her school at dawn, with the Air Force demanding answers. This is the story of one woman's courage, a boy's hope, and a community that rose to fight for justice. The morning sun barely broke through the gray clouds hanging over Willow Creek, a small town nestled in the rolling hills of the Midwest. Cruz, a 29-year-old history teacher, walked briskly toward Willow Creek Middle School, her breath visible in the crisp autumn air. Her dark hair was pulled into a neat bun, and her worn messenger bag bounced against her hip, filled with lesson plans and a thermos of coffee. Elena had been teaching for 5 years, her passion for history matched only by her quiet determination to make a difference in her students' lives. The school was a squat, brick building, its paint peeling from years of neglect. Budget cuts had hit Willow Creek hard, leaving the cafeteria understocked and the classrooms overcrowded. Elena noticed the changes most in her students, kids like 13-year-old Marcus Tate, a lanky boy with wary brown eyes who sat in the back of her third period class. Marcus was new to the school, having moved to town with his mother Tanya after his father's factory job disappeared. Tanya worked double shifts at a diner, leaving Marcus to fend for himself most days. That morning, as Elena set up her classroom, she noticed Marcus slouched at his desk, his hoodie pulled tight over his head. He hadn't turned in homework in weeks, and his usual spark was dimming. During a break, Elena approached him, her voice gentle but firm. "Marcus, everything okay? You seem quieter than usual." He shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "Just tired." Ms. Cruz. She noticed his hands fidgeting, his sneakers scuffed and too small for his growing feet. "Did you eat breakfast?" she asked, already suspecting the answer. Marcus hesitated, then shook his head. "Ran out of cereal. Mom's been working late." Elena's heart sank. She'd seen this before, kids too proud to admit they were hungry, too young to fix the systems that failed them. Without a second thought, she reached into her bag and pulled out her lunch, a turkey sandwich, an apple, and a granola bar. "Here," she said, sliding the food across his desk. "You need to eat to keep up with my quizzes." Marcus stared at the food, his eyes widening. "Ms. Cruz, I can't." "You can and you will," she said with a smile. "No one learns history on an empty stomach." He took the sandwich, mumbling a thank you, and Elena returned to her desk, unaware that the school's vice principal, Marjorie Holt, had been watching from the doorway. Marjorie, a stern woman in her 50s with a reputation for enforcing rules over empathy, pursed her lips. The school had a strict policy, no sharing personal food with students, a rule born from liability fears and budget constraints. To Marjorie, Elena's act was a violation, not a kindness. By noon, word of Elena's gesture had spread among the staff. During lunch duty, she overheard whispers from other teachers, some supportive, others wary. "She's just asking for trouble," one muttered. Elena ignored them, focusing on her students, but the tension lingered. That afternoon, Marjorie called Elena into her office. The room was stark, with a single wilting plant on the windowsill. Marjorie sat behind her desk, her glasses perched low on her nose. "Ms. Cruz," she began, "your actions today were reckless. You broke school policy by giving food to a student." Elena frowned, caught off guard. "Marcus was hungry. I gave him my lunch. How is that reckless?" "It's a liability," Marjorie snapped. "What if he had allergies? What if other students demand the same? We have a free lunch program for a reason." "A program that's underfunded," Elena countered, her voice steady but firm. "Kids like Marcus fall through the cracks." "Wasn't going to let him go hungry." Marjorie's eyes narrowed. "This isn't a charity. You're a teacher, not a social worker. You've been warned before about bending rules." Elena's mind flashed to previous incidents, staying late to tutor kids for free, buying supplies out of her own pocket. She'd always pushed boundaries, but this felt different. "So what now?" she asked. "You're suspended, effective immediately," Marjorie said. "The school board will review your case tomorrow. I suggest you prepare." Elena left the office, her chest tight with anger and disbelief. She drove home to her small apartment, the weight of the day pressing down on her. She didn't regret helping Marcus, but the consequences felt surreal. That night, she called her older sister, Carla, a nurse who lived 2 towns over. "They're acting like I committed a crime," Elena said, pacing her kitchen. "All I did was feed a kid." Carla sighed through the phone. "You did the right thing, but you know how bureaucracies work. They hate being shown up. You need to fight this, Elena." "I will," she said, though she wasn't sure how. As she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she couldn't shake the image of Marcus's grateful eyes. She'd fight, not just for her job, but for kids like him. The next morning, the school board meeting loomed. Elena dressed carefully, choosing a navy blazer and her best slacks, her hands trembling as she tied her hair back. The boardroom was packed with teachers, parents, and even a few students, including Marcus, who sat in the back with his mother. Tanya Tate looked exhausted, her diner uniform still on from an overnight shift. The board, led by Chairman Harold Vance, a retired banker with a penchant for efficiency, heard Marjorie's case first. She presented Elena's actions as a pattern of defiance, citing the food incident as the final straw. "Ms. Cruz disregards protocol," Marjorie said. "She risks the school's reputation and safety." When it was Elena's turn, she stood, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I gave Marcus my lunch because he was hungry. This school's lunch program doesn't reach every kid who needs it. If caring about my students is a violation, then I'm guilty. But I won't apologize for it." A murmur rippled through the room. Tanya stood, her voice shaking. "My son was starving, and Ms. Cruz helped him when no one else did. You should be thanking her, not firing her." The board deliberated for hours. Elena waited in the hallway, her stomach in knots. Marcus approached her, his hoodie still up. "I'm sorry, Ms. Cruz," he whispered. "I didn't mean to get you in trouble." She knelt to his level. "You didn't do anything wrong, Marcus. I'd do it again in a heartbeat." When the board returned, Harold Vance's face was grim. "Ms. Cruz, your intentions may have been good, but rules exist. For a reason, you're terminated, effective immediately." The room erupted in gasps and protests. Elena felt the air leave her lungs, but she held her head high as she walked out. She didn't see Marcus's clenched fists or the tears in Tanya's eyes. She didn't know that this was only the beginning. The news of Elena's firing spread through Willow Creek like wildfire. By evening, local social media groups buzzed with outrage. Parents posted about Elena's kindness, sharing stories of how she'd gone out of her way for their kids, buying books for struggling readers, organizing after-school study groups. Students, including Marcus, started a hashtag, "Stand with Ms. Cruz." By midnight, it had hundreds of posts, with kids sharing photos of Elena's classroom, filled with colorful history timelines and inspirational quotes. Marcus sat in his cramped bedroom, scrolling through the posts on his second-hand phone. Guilt gnawed at him. He hadn't meant for Ms. Cruz to lose her job. He typed a post. "Ms. Cruz gave me her lunch because I was hungry. She's the best teacher I ever had. This isn't fair." He hit send, unaware that it would go viral by morning, shared thousands of times across the state. Tanya, meanwhile, was furious. She worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, but the system still failed her son. At the diner, she overheard customers talking about Elena's firing. "They're punishing her for caring," she told a coworker. "Someone needs to do something." That someone turned out to be Priya Sharma, a local journalist who ran a small online news outlet, Willow Creek Chronicle. Priya, a single mother, in her 30s, had a knack for uncovering stories the mainstream media ignored. She'd met Elena once at a school fundraiser and admired her quiet strength. When Priya saw the marring "Stand with Ms. Cruz" hashtag, she knew there was a story. Priya visited Elena the next day, finding her sorting through boxes in her apartment, already packing up her teaching materials. "I'm not giving up," Elena told her, though her eyes were tired. "But I don't know what's next." Priya's interview was raw and honest. Elena spoke about the budget cuts, the kids who came to school hungry, and the rules that prioritized liability over humanity. Marcus wasn't just a student to me, she said. He's a kid who deserves better. They all do. The article, published that evening, exploded online. Titled, "Fired for Feeding a Hungry Child, A Teacher's Stand," it detailed Elena's story and the school's failing lunch program. Priya included data. 40% of Willow Creek students qualified for free lunches, but the program was underfunded, leaving many kids with meager portions or nothing at all. The article ended with a call to action. Willow Creek, what will you do for your kids? By the next morning, protests formed outside the school. Parents and students held signs reading, "Reinstate Ms. Cruz" and "Feed our kids." Marcus stood at the front, his hoodie swapped for a borrowed jacket, shouting alongside his classmates. Tanya took a rare day off to join him, her voice hoarse from chanting. Elena watched the protest from across the street, her heart swelling but heavy. She didn't want to make things harder for the school, but she couldn't stay silent. She joined the crowd, hugging Marcus and Tanya. "You don't have to do this," she told them. "Yes, we do," Tanya said. "You stood up for my son. Now we're standing up for you." The protest caught the attention of a state senator, Clara Nguyen, who represented Willow Creek's district. Clara, a former teacher herself, was appalled by the story. She contacted Priya, promising to investigate the school's funding and policies. "This isn't just about one teacher," Clara told her. "It's about a system that's failing our kids." Clara's involvement escalated the story to the state level. News outlets picked it up, and soon Elena's face was on evening broadcasts. She was invited to speak on a local talk show where she reiterated her stance. "I'm not a hero. I'm a teacher who saw a need. The real issue is why our kids are going hungry in the first place." Back at the school, Marjorie Holt and the board were under pressure. Harold Vance issued a statement defending the firing, claiming it was about maintaining order and safety. But the public wasn't buying it. Donations poured into a crowdfunding campaign started by Priya to support Elena, raising enough to cover her rent for months. Meanwhile, Marcus and his classmates took their activism further. They organized a Lunch for All drive, collecting canned goods and snacks to distribute to students in need. Marcus, shy but determined, spoke at a community meeting. "Ms. Cruz cared about us," he said, his voice cracking. "She shouldn't lose her job for that." Elena, watching from the back, wiped tears from her eyes. She hadn't realized how much her small act had meant to her students. But the fight was far from over. Rumors swirled that the school board was doubling down, refusing to reconsider her termination. And then, a new player entered the fray. A retired Air Force colonel named James Whitaker, who lived on the outskirts of town. James, a gruff man in his 60s, had been following the story. His grandson Liam was in Elena's class and had come home raving about her. James had served 30 years in the military, overseeing logistics and community outreach programs. He saw Elena's firing as an injustice, but more than that, he saw a broken system. He reached out to his old contacts in the Air Force, men and women who'd worked with him on civilian aid projects. "This town needs a wake-up call," he told them, "and I know just how to deliver it." At dawn on a chilly Thursday, the ground shook with the rumble of helicopters. Willow Creek residents stepped onto their porches, staring in disbelief, as 3 Air Force choppers touched down in the empty field behind the school. Colonel James Whitaker, dressed in a crisp jacket with his old service pins, stepped out of the lead helicopter, followed by a dozen uniformed personnel carrying crates stamped with military insignia. The town was stunned, parents dropping off. Their kids stopped their cars and teachers gathered at classroom windows. Marcus, arriving early for the Lunch for All drive, ran to the field, his eyes wide. "Ms. Cruz!" he shouted, spotting Elena among the crowd. "What's happening?" Elena, as confused as everyone else, shook her head. "I have no idea, Marcus." James approached the school's entrance where Marjorie Holt stood, her face pale. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. James's voice was calm but commanding. "Ma'am, I'm Colonel James Whitaker, U.S. Air Force, retired. My team is here to deliver emergency food supplies to your students. We've heard about the hunger problem and we're stepping in. Marjorie sputtered. This is unauthorized. You can't just— We have clearance from state authorities, James interrupted, handing her a document signed by Senator Clara Nguyen. Your school's lunch program is failing. We're here to help until it's fixed. The crates contained non-perishable foods, canned vegetables, pasta, rice, and protein bars, enough to feed the school for weeks. The Air Force team, part of a civilian aid initiative, worked with volunteers to set up a distribution center in the school gym. Elena joined them, rolling up her sleeves to unload boxes alongside James's grandson, Liam, and other students. The media descended on Willow Creek by noon. Priya's Chronicle live-streamed the event, capturing James's speech to the crowd. This isn't about one teacher or one school. It's about kids who deserve better. Elena Cruz lost her job for doing what's right. It's time we all do the same. The story went national. News anchors debated the ethics of Elena's firing, while commentators praised the Air Force's bold move. Social media exploded with Donagar Willow Creek rising, and donations to the Lunch for All drive tripled. Elena, thrust into the spotlight, gave interviews reluctantly, always redirecting attention to the students. This isn't about me, she told a reporter. It's about making sure no kid goes hungry. Behind the scenes, Senator Clara Nguyen was working with state officials to audit the school's budget. She discovered that funds allocated for the lunch program had been diverted to administrative salaries and facility upgrades. Clara shared her findings with Priya, who published a scathing follow-up article. The public's outrage grew, and pressure mounted on the school board to act. Marjorie Holt, feeling the heat, called an emergency board meeting. Harold Vance, usually unflappable, was visibly shaken by the Air Force's intervention. This is a PR disaster, he muttered. We need to contain it. But containment was impossible. The community was galvanized. Tanya organized a town hall where parents, students, and even some teachers demanded Elena's reinstatement and a reformed lunch program. Marcus spoke again, his voice stronger now. Ms. Cruz believed in us. Why can't the school believe in her? Elena, watching from the audience, felt a mix of pride and exhaustion. She hadn't wanted to be a symbol, but she couldn't deny the movement she'd sparked. That night, James Whitaker invited her to his home for coffee. His living room was filled with military memorabilia, a testament to his years of service. You've got a fire in you, James told her. This town needs people like you. Don't let them grind you down. I'm trying, Elena said, but what if this doesn't change anything? James smiled. It already has. You've got the Air Force, a senator, and half the country behind you. Keep pushing. The Air Force's intervention marked a turning point, but the fight was far from over. The school board, under scrutiny, agreed to a public hearing to address Elena's firing and the lunch program's failures. The hearing was set for the following week in the town's community center, a cavernous hall usually reserved for holiday events. Elena spent the days leading up to it preparing with Priya and Clara, who coached her on speaking to the crowd. The hearing was packed, with standing room only. News vans lined the street and cameras flashed as Elena walked in, flanked by Tanya and Marcus. The board sat at a long table, Harold Vance at the center, his expression unreadable. Marjorie Holt was absent, having taken personal leave. Amid the controversy, Harold opened the hearing, his voice clipped. We're here to address concerns about recent events and school policies. Ms. Cruz, you may speak. Elena stood, her hands steady despite the eyes on her. I was fired for giving a hungry student my lunch, she began. But this isn't about one sandwich. It's about a system that lets kids go hungry while we hide behind rules. I broke a policy, yes, but I'd do it again. Because my job isn't just to teach history, it's to care for my students. The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus, sitting in the front row, grinned. Tanya squeezed his hand, tears in her eyes. Parents and students spoke next, sharing stories of empty lunch trays and overstretched teachers. Clara presented her audit, revealing the misallocated funds. This board has failed its students, she said. Reinstate Ms. Cruz and fix the lunch program or the state will intervene. Harold's face reddened, but he didn't respond. The board promised to deliberate and deliver a decision within days. Elena left the hearing cautiously optimistic, but the wait was agonizing. She spent her days helping with the Lunch for All drive, sorting donations with Marcus and Liam. The Air Force team stayed in town, training volunteers to maintain the food distribution. Meanwhile, Priya's reporting uncovered more. Marjorie, Holt had lobbied for stricter policies to avoid lawsuits, prioritizing the school's image over student welfare. The revelation turned public sentiment further against the board. Protests grew, with students staging walkouts and parents flooding the board with letters. On the eve of the board's decision, Elena received a call from James Whitaker. "I've got a surprise," he said. "Meet me at the school tomorrow, at dawn." Curious, Elena arrived to find James and his Air Force team unloading more supplies, this time laptops and books donated by a veterans charity. "For your classroom," James said, "when you get your job back." Elena laughed, touched by his faith. "You're awfully sure of that." "I've seen battles," he said. "You're winning this one." The board's decision came that afternoon. In a packed press conference, Harold Vance announced that Elena would be reinstated with back pay, and the lunch program would receive emergency funding. The crowd cheered, and Marcus hugged Elena so tightly she could barely breathe. Tanya wept openly, and Priya's camera captured every moment. But Elena knew the victory was only partial. The system was still flawed, and one win didn't fix everything. She returned to teaching the next week, greeted by a classroom full of cheering students. Marcus handed her a drawing he'd made, a superhero version of Ms. Cruz, holding a sandwich like a shield. Elena's return to Willow Creek Middle School was bittersweet. The classroom felt like home, but the scars of the fight lingered. Some colleagues welcomed her back warmly, while others loyal to Marjorie Holt kept their distance. Marjorie had resigned quietly, and a new vice principal, a young educator named Daniel Park, was hired to replace her. Daniel, who'd taught in underfunded urban schools, shared Elena's passion for reform. Together, they worked to overhaul the lunch program. The emergency funding helped, but it wasn't enough. Elena and Daniel launched a community partnership, securing donations from local businesses and churches. The Lunch for All drive became a permanent program, with students like Marcus and Liam helping to distribute food. Elena also started an after-school history club, using the donated books and laptops to engage her students. Marcus joined, his confidence growing as he researched civil rights leaders. "You're like them," he told Elena one day. "You fought for what's right." She smiled, ruffling his hair. "You're fighting too, Marcus. Don't forget that." Clara Nguyen pushed for state-level changes, advocating for increased school funding. Her audit led to investigations into other districts exposing similar mismanagement. Priya's Chronicle gained national recognition, and she hired a small team to expand her coverage. Tanya, inspired by the movement, enrolled in night classes to become a social worker, determined to help families like hers. James Whitaker stayed involved, visiting the school to mentor students interested in military service. His Air Force team returned periodically, bringing supplies and sharing stories of their work. The town began to see the school not just as a building, but as a community hub. Yet challenges remained. Some parents resisted the changes, wary of outsiders like the Air Force or Clara's state oversight. Elena faced occasional pushback from teachers who felt she'd disrupted the status quo. But she pressed on, guided by her belief that every student deserved a chance. One evening, as she graded papers, Elena found a note from Marcus. "Thanks for not giving up on us." She pinned it to her bulletin board, a reminder of why she fought. A year later, Willow Creek was transformed. The lunch program was fully funded, serving nutritious meals to every student who needed them. Elena's history club had grown, with students presenting projects at state competitions. Marcus, now a confident 8th grader, won an award for his essay on local activism, dedicating it to Elena. The town held a festival to celebrate the school's revival, with food stalls, music, and speeches. James Whitaker spoke, his voice booming. "This started with one teacher's courage. Let's keep that spirit alive." Elena took the stage last, her voice steady but emotional. "This isn't my victory, it's ours. Every student, parent, and neighbor who stood up made this possible. Let's keep fighting for our kids. The crowd roared and Marcus led a chant of, Ms. Cruz, Ms. Cruz. Tanya, now halfway through her social work degree, beamed with pride. Priya live-streamed the event, her chronicle now a trusted voice in the region. Clara Nguyen announced a new state grant for school nutrition, inspired by Willow Creek's story. As the festival ended, Elena walked through the crowd, hugging students and parents. She felt a quiet pride, not in herself, but in the community they'd built. The Air Force helicopters were gone, but their impact lingered, a reminder that change was possible, even in a small town. That night, Elena sat in her apartment, reflecting on the past year. She'd never expected her small act to spark a movement, but she was grateful it had. She opened her laptop and typed a letter to her students to be read at the next school assembly. Dear kids, you are the reason I teach. Your courage, your voices, your hearts, they're changing the world. Never stop standing up for what's right. If you were moved by Elena's story, please support our channel, subscribe, share, and join our community to keep these stories alive. Your support helps us tell more tales of courage and change. Thank you for being part of this journey.